Welcome everybody to our first episode of Q&Ray. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, I think it'd be important to start with why we're doing this. So 3 years ago, I started a coaches mentoring program all online. I mirrored it after my weekly coaches meetings with my gym. I was running CrossFit Stronghold at the time. And about 3 months into it, I decided that this was what I really want to focus on, was equipping coaches. And it sort of worked out that my lease at my gym was running out and my new landlord wanted to triple my rent. And I was like, no, I'm not down with that. So I went on Zoom 3 years before it was cool. And I've been doing this ever since. This is Amy Chang. She's been a member of my coaches group since June of last year, so 2019. And I know I opened this up to everyone saying, hey, I want to work with those of you guys who want to get coaching but can't quite afford it. But I'm starting with Amy because I got the idea from her. She opened this up just recently. She said, hey, I want to give an hour of my week, every week, to do outdoor chores if you have them. And I'm like, dude, that's such a brilliant idea because in the 3 years I've been running this program, we started at $20 a month, which I think is a freaking steal to get coached by someone, you know. And back then, and the reason why I started this group in the first place was that when I took over my gym, CrossFit Stronghold, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything at all. I took over my gym completely green. I think I'd been to 6 or 7 CrossFit classes ever in my entire life, including my level 1. And suddenly I was a head coach at a gym. Obviously very qualified for the job. And it was about 3-4 years of just struggling and trying to figure stuff out. It was during that time that I started working with Coach Bergner, or actually started with Coach Bergner's youngest son, Cody, and that's how I met Coach B. I worked with Teresa Larson, who was working for Kelly Starrett at the time. I just was trying to surround myself with a lot of smart people so that I could learn. And I wanted to try and offer that same opportunity to other coaches who are in the same boat, particularly for people who work in small towns and don't have access to coaching like that. I wanted to become a resource for coaches who want to learn, want to grow. And over time, I've raised the rates little by little by little by little over the last 3 years. We're currently at $100 a month, and what that gets you is 5 live calls a week with me. 5 live calls a week with me. My phone number, you can text me whenever you want to, plus 3 years of archived meetings where we talk about everything about movement, coaching philosophy, running your business, all the things. I feel like $100 a month is a steal because I pay $350 a month to be part of another coaching mentoring program. And yet, I get a lot of people inquiring about my coaching, and then when I tell them how much it costs, I get ghosted. And I got tired of being ghosted. And I want to help people, but I can't do it for free. And however, I liked Amy's idea of giving away an hour of your time a week. I'm going to give away half an hour because after the video, I'm going to be editing and doing some stuff and making sure this is cohesive. I cut out the parts where I go on rabbit trails because I tend to do that. We'll probably get 10 minutes of usable content from a 30-minute call. See, I'm already rambling. Oh well. Anyways, but yeah, I used to put out lots of video for CrossFit weightlifting. Once a week, I did a tip for weightlifting, and I started doing some stuff like that for Kai Athletics. But that kind of stuff is really exhausting, and I just don't have the energy to come up with more ideas. So I figured this would be a great way to just, hey, come on a call with me. I'll give you 30 minutes of my time. Ask me whatever questions you want. I will answer them. And in return, I'm going to share this with the public so that other coaches can learn and grow with you. It's 30 minutes of time we're going to spend anyway. Might as well record it and then just upload it, hopefully with minimal editing. So
Well,
that's what we're doing.
being a part of your group has been a big, do you mind?
Yeah,
If
go
I,
for it.
yeah, being a part of the Stronghold mentoring group has been huge for me because, I've been a level 1 trainer since like, I don't know, like '09 or something, before there was ever a test. I had to go back and take the test. Um, but in my gym, we are in a small town, and the owner and like my coach was awesome. And then he would go places and compete and find and hook up and chat with all these people and get all this knowledge. But as far as, and he would share it with us as athletes, but as far as being a coach, if I were coaching at my gym, he wasn't there. It wasn't like, hey, Amy, come under my wing and I'm going to show you how to organize a class, how to really reach out and add value to your clients, how to really train your eye for flaws, how to know how to fix flaws. So I was sort of on my own. And the level 1 was great. The level 2 just like blew my mind and took me like one step up. And then actually, Ray, I found your group because I was working with Deb out of Fayetteville,
Fayetteville.
looking at uh, interested in getting my level 3. So I either had to redo level 2 or bump up and do level 3. And I actually decided to redo level 2. And I'm not sad about that. I think that was a good decision at the time. But, so many people in the Stronghold group have successfully studied for and passed their level 3.
Mm-hmm.
And like the one time pass your rate on that sucker is not very high.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you look for, it's $100 of my money every month. And I coach one time a week. I
Wow.
basically coach one time a week. I'm not paid. I'm the affiliate owner. I like it that way because I can go in and get my coaching fix without having to deal with the ownership hassle of running the gym, staffing it,
Mm-hmm.
doing all that. But what I love is that what I can get out of your group is not only peer to peer connection, which is extremely valuable, especially knowing that we're an international group,
Mm-hmm.
but I can also get to become really the very best coach I can be without spending hours and hours and hours on the floor. So, this is not my career, this is not my income, but I want to be the best coach that anybody ever knows. I want when they walk in the door, they're like, oh man, thank God Amy's here. Not in a competitive way, but in a like, that is who I want to be. I want their hour with me to be the best hour of their week. I'm really committed to that. And being a part of the Stronghold Mentoring Group helps me not only like peer wise, but also technical stuff, training my eye, knowing the fixes, and also like the idea. I got to shut that door. Hang on. The idea of who I am as a coach and what that means to my athletes.
Yeah.
I got to grab a dog. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, just kind of adding to that, number one, I want to make a quick disclaimer. If you want to come to me to study for your level 3, I cannot help you test. I cannot help you study for it. It's legally not allowed. I'm not allowed to help you with that. However, the stuff that we talk about every single week will indirectly help you prepare for the level 3 because we consistently talk about CrossFit things. All right, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not allowed to help you study for level 3. We don't do that in our coaches group. Sometimes people come to me for that, and I go, no, that's not what we do. It's legally, we're not allowed to do that because we don't want to dilute the level 3. We don't want to help people pass it. We want you to pass it on your own because that level 3 credential is important and it's special. If, by the way, you're calling yourself level 1 certified, you probably missed one question on the level 1 test because you're not allowed to say you're certified until you're level 3. So I just want to throw that quick disclaimer out. And one thing that I aim to do, like one of my primary things I'm committed to as far as this mentoring program that I run is what I teach you is more than just coaching in class. Like people don't realize that coaching CrossFit, coaching weightlifting, coaching whatever it is you're coaching, you're not really coaching movement, you're coaching people. And I call it peopling. That's really what I teach is peopling, which is something you can carry on outside the gym into everyday life, working with your kids, all the things. Like my goal is to make people better humans. So, um, basically the idea behind our Q&Ray sessions moving forward is that I want to give people an outlet and an ability to work with me without having to, um, well, like Amy said. And I think that's interesting that she doesn't get paid at her gym, but yet she still makes the personal investment to work with me. Because one of the most um, what's the word I'm looking for? Objections to working with me is that, hey, I work once a week. That doesn't even cover. I can't afford that. There's a lot of coaches who work for next to nothing, and be able to pay for continuing education is outside of their reach. And so sometimes people are nice and tell me, hey, I can't afford that right now. But most of the time, people just ghost me and they don't like respond and they disappear. And I reach out, I go, all right, whatever. But at the end of the day, I want to help. But I learned early on, especially in running my gym, that if you give things away for free, people don't quite appreciate it as much. But 30 minutes of my time every week is not that bad. And I'm looking for content to post anyway, so it's a win-win-win. So that's what we're doing for the next foreseeable future. I'm hoping to invite coaches of all experience levels to come meet with me for 30 minutes. And what we'll do, this is how it's going to work now. So Amy helped me put together the idea for this thing. So a couple things you can do. We can get on a call for 30 minutes and you can ask me whatever you want about coaching and I will answer your questions. I'm not afraid of giving away my secrets. In fact, I give away my secrets all the time. Amy will vouch for me on that. And I'm also very transparent when I'm wrong. When I learn something and I realize, crap, I've been teaching that wrong for the last 12 months. Well, here we go. Here's how you're supposed to do it. Um, so I'm not afraid to give away my secrets. I will tell you all the things and I will share it because I want people to grow and I want people to learn. You can also come on the call, and that's actually what we're gonna do today. Is Amy has brought in some video for us to watch, and I'm going to watch it with her. I'm going to ask her what she sees, and possibly point her and guide her into the direction of things that I would be looking for, to try to trace the root of the issues, and then give her some ideas as far as how to correct these issues. Okay, so let's get started with that. Our timer is set for now. We're going 30 minutes from here and then we'll see how if we can get through this.
Are we starting with my most difficult athlete?
Justin, let's start with Justin. Okay.
Whenever you're training your partner, spouse, boyfriend, child, they're typically your most challenging athlete.
Well, let me teach you something that I have learned from Coach Bergner.
Never train your wife?
Yeah, Coach B told me he's only been fired once in his entire life, and that was by Boss Haas. Mrs. Bergner. Hi, Leslie. We miss you. If you're watching this, we miss you. Yeah, don't coach your wife. I thought I could do it, and then I coached my then girlfriend at the time, and she kind of listened to me, and then she's sitting over there looking at me like, she's like, then it got to a point like I can't work out when you're in the room. I can't, and I'm like why? She's like, it just makes me so nervous. I do everything wrong, and like now I just bite my tongue because now that we're married, it's even worse. It's like, oh man, I can't escape this. If I piss her off, then I'm in the doghouse for the rest of the week.
Well, it's funny. That's actually why I sent this video because Justin doesn't take the coaching.
No.
It drives me nuts. And I was like, he'll take Ray's coaching.
Well, Amy's like, I can't work out with you at all. Like, I'm just gonna go work out by myself with my headphones on. I love you, but I can't do it. And I'm like, all right, this is fine.
Okay. Well, and I have to say, one thing that's tough about Justin, I kid him a lot about not being coachable. He listens, but one thing that's tough about him is he's got a bad back and bad knees.
Okay.
And when you have a combination client with bad back and bad knees, it just stinks. Because a lot of like the overhead stuff that I would modify out to him, or even a lot of the full body stuff that I would modify out to him, I'd modify to like a leg movement.
Right.
And I can't do a leg movement with him.
Right.
So far I've been decreasing his range of motion on his squats, having him squat to a higher target. Same thing with like lunges, anything that's impact, box jumps or anything like that, it goes to a step up. If it's just step ups, you know, sometimes I lower the target. His clean, he did do some cleans on that video. I had him do an overhead. I said, Bud, what's the movement that really gives you the most? He's like, you know, when you do that one and you go down, and I'm thinking, yeah, overhead squat. Of course, it gives. I mean, like you just picked the worst for everybody.
For sure.
So, but that was good. I had him send you a couple overhead squats and air squats because we all know where the root of that issue is.
Absolutely.
And then he said, well, do you want me to do some of those things? And I was like, yes, let's do some of those. So he did some of those, and just his movement is just a little awkward, you know, and that's how I find too, a lot of people who you watch them, and especially like in video, I can pull it down, and I do video actually a lot of the athletes in my gym, so I can slow it down and look, even if it takes me, you know, until the next day to get it, then I'll text them, you know, what I find. But if it's just sort of an awkward mover, it's harder for me to pinpoint exactly what might be flaws, how to prioritize them, and the cues to give them to fix them.
Awesome. So here's where I would like to start. Here's like where I like to start. Number one, and I encourage every coach to do this. Number one, know what your athletes do for work. Because, so Justin's a golfer. He plays golf a lot, right? So he's a golfer. I always want to know the context of who I'm working with. I like to know what they do for a living because that's how they spend most of their day. And that's going to influence a lot of the way they move. I mean, it seems very innocuous and very innocent, but it does play a role in how someone's going to move in the gym. And then I also want to know their athletic history moving going from like childhood until current day, anything they did for 6 months or more, because that also ingrains some patterns. So what do we know about Justin? He's a golfer, which means he's a rotational athlete, which means that he's going to be stronger in his obliques on one side. So external obliques will be strong on one side, internal oblique will be different. So he's gonna have an imbalance that way. There's gonna be
Yes.
because one side's really good at creating acceleration, while the other side's really good at decelerating, and the other ways might not be as well developed. So that's one thing we're gonna look at. When I hear about knees and back, right away, the first thing I'm gonna look at is I'm gonna look at the glutes.
Oh yeah.
Oftentimes, if there's glute dysfunction or psoas dysfunction, you're gonna have a lot of knee pain. Knee pain also, to me, often indicates overuse of the quads, and which often implies underutilization of the hamstrings. So those will be just off the top of my head, without even having seen him move. Those are the things I'm going to be zeroing my eyes in on.
And I
But
will
you
say yes. Yes, we are going to zero our eyes on glutes and hamstrings. Yes, and
yeah,
over quads. And, he has been, so for history, he has been a golfer since he was like 13.
okay.
So he played all through high school, took a break on college, and now he's been hitting it pretty hard, maybe 3, 4 times a week. And sure enough, like I really do think that he could at least go somewhere and play competitively enough to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a back injury carrying a couch about,
Okay.
I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. He was bent over this way. He was on the steps and it dropped and he got pulled. So that tends to go here, um,
Right side of the back hurts.
middle.
So middle. So the direct center of his back.
Yep, is
Okay.
typically so. This is sort of where he gets the spasms and whatnot. Fun
Okay.
times, back spasm, but he stays tight through his erectors. And the other thing is that when he was in junior high, high school, I think he did like a little bit of footballing, but mostly it was like being in the weight room and hitting the 300-pound club. And the lifting that is done in those weight rooms,
Not pretty.
well, you just get all kinds. But I've got a lot of athletes who come to the gym and they're like, yeah, I clean and jerk it in high school, and they show me their clean and jerk, and I'm like, oh, hang on, that's going to take some. We need to undo that and redo that a little
Yeah.
bit. So when he tells me that he was, the 300 back squat or deadlift, whatever it was
Yeah.
back in the
300 pound
day,
club.
yeah, I'm like,
So
so you got some of that going
Is
on.
is it like on the it's muscular, right? The pain is muscular. Is it equally both right and left, or mostly right, mostly left? Is it
It's the tightness he gets is just through general the low back, and then if he spasms, it's typically up in here.
but
And
both?
I don't know what side. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
that's
don't
what
know
I'm
what
wondering.
side.
Both if it's both sides versus one side. It does matter because one thing that I would probably link that to, possibly if it's more on one side, it could have also be related to just the rotational aspect
Yeah,
of a
the
sport,
rotation stuff. Yeah, I hadn't thought
right?
about that.
So if he's
Yeah.
not able to stabilize with his obliques on one side, a mid back is one of the places where that takes up a lot of tension. And so in a case like that, a stressful thing like that, it's like, oh crap, it tensed up real hard because the other place wasn't contributing, and now it freaks out. I want to say this real quick: mobility, flexibility, and this is something that you know is kind of a mind blow for a lot of people. Flexibility and mobility are limited by fear. Fear because your body is afraid of the position, it's been hurt there, it's not familiar with it, it's not strong with it, and so sometimes, and the reason why that works is that the body's trying to protect itself. It doesn't want to get hurt again. So oftentimes it won't allow you to go into a position because it doesn't feel like it can safely recover from it. Or if anything resembles a type of trauma that it's had before, it's going to freak out and freeze. So when you say, so the natural mechanism for your body when you start to go into stress is to go on the low back. That's a very common thing. You know, I've worked with people a lot and I'll ask them, hey, when your back blows out, does it ever coincide with like a stressful season in your life? And most of the time we'll get a yes. They're like, oh, okay. So there's this book that I've been reading. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's interesting the patterns that you can start to recognize in people and the emotional state of the person, the state in general of that person. You'll see that sometimes um, movement dysfunction will manifest itself in a way that's commensurate and related to the stress that that person is experiencing. So in general, the low back, the erectors, they tense up real hard when something stressful happens, when you feel unsafe, or let's say something in you're doing something within your body and you're freaking out and don't know what to do. That's when the low back tends to really blow up. So the moral of the story, if you're trying to increase someone's flexibility, mobility, or help them at all in exercise, or just in general in life, like the whole point of stronghold, the stronghold comes from the Bible, Psalm 18:2. It talks about a safe place of refuge. And so that's kind of a big overarching theme of my practice as a coach, as a mentor, is helping people feel safe. And the same thing is true and necessary when you're trying to improve movement, mobility, flexibility. The body needs to feel safe. And if it doesn't feel safe, it won't let you do what you want it to do. So that's a really important concept to build your practice on, is helping people feel safe, developing safety in their training. So
I didn't know that that's why you did Stronghold.
yeah, that's where it comes from. Um,
So, side note, that client I sent to you for the movement assessment,
uh-huh.
and you did the first movement assessment with me, loved it.
Really?
So, thank you.
Cool.
Good job.
Awesome.
All right, sorry.
Anywho, yeah, so let's take a look at Justin real fast. So a couple things we know about him. Golfer since 13 years old, 14 years old?
13. So, like developmental, I think when you get a person who's been doing it since their body was like developing,
Yeah,
a whole different game than like, oh, I started when I was 18, fully grown.
yeah. And how old is he now?
31.
31. So I'm terrible at math. 31 minus 13, 18 years?
20-ish. Almost 20, yeah.
Wow,
Almost
okay.
20.
All right, let's take a look at it.
Take a look at little Justin.
Go ahead and squat.
So tight.
It's so tight.
Yeah, that was before he did anything this morning. For 31, he sure does look like an old man, right?
You keep going.
We call him Paw Paw. Just picking on him a little bit.
Paul? What's that mean?
Paw Paw. Like
Oh,
Papaw.
Pawpaw.
Like
Okay.
Grandma. Like I'm a
Got it.
grandpa.
Okay.
I go like this.
Yeah.
I don't have any mobility.
You
So
lean
and
forward.
if I put weight on there, then that really strains it.
Okay, give me that stick. And let's see you do the same thing just with an air squat. So just about 3 there. Good. And get you a couple,
Squatting is also more challenging on these shoes.
couple of these.
See those knees.
Good. And
So he's kind of naturally,
anything
what is
else?
that called when the knees kind of come in?
He pronates.
Okay.
He's got knock knee.
That's it, knock knee. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and a lot of that I think is that golf swing, because there's a lot of that. There's a lot when he sets up in his golf, and actually I have a lot more videos from golfing than I do moving.
Okay.
But he gets sort of like this
With his knees knocked in like that.
and creates that tension coming through.
Right.
So I don't know if that is just because of how his body is, or if that's a golf thing. I haven't really worked with any.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with golf. This already kind of scares me because it's kind of outside my wheelhouse, apart from knowing that like the rotation part.
Well, good, because we get people who do stuff that we have no idea about all the time.
All the time. So full transparency, I'm not that good at golf. I don't know anything about golf. All right,
It's just a little
so
hang clean.
okay, front rack is a little bit non-existent.
Yeah, it is. And actually, he's like, yeah, I just really can't get my arms up, and I'm like, yes, I see that.
Okay, so let's just start with some low-hanging fruit. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little intimidated by this one because I don't know a lot about golf, and here's the thing: if you look at him at face value, I would say that most inexperienced CrossFit coaches look at this like he looks pretty good
Looks
because
pretty
he's
good.
tracking with his toes. I mean, there's definitely some things going on with his midline, and there's subtle things that most people will overlook and be like, "Oh, it looks fine." Um, Other things that we see he doesn't go below parallel, which is another thing that's a really big thing when we talk about range of motion and CrossFit
And that's a little bit deeper than I typically take him.
than he normally does.
Yeah, and especially like anything weighted with like wall balls or a thruster. With the thruster, I usually just say do a push press. And
Right.
when he does a push press, he usually takes it to like a quarter squat anyway, so he doesn't really do like a quick dip.
Yep.
So I just call that a thruster for him.
Okay, well let's just talk briefly about what I'm gonna and I'm kind of glad that he scares me because now I'm gonna be able to talk about what I'm gonna look at systematically while I'm trying to figure him out. Because I think face value, he doesn't look like a terrible mover. He's not as train wrecky as I was as it kind
As you thought.
as it yeah as you thought because based on the way you described it to me at first, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a train wreck. But no, I would not call this a train wreck. Couple things. His knees do track with his toes. He is not getting below parallel. That's another thing that we're looking at. But let's just start with the feet first, okay? So Coach Bergner always says that 90% of lifts are missed because of the feet. And so that's where I start because I've watched my coach do that while he's coaching people. So I'm going to look at the feet. His feet, the position, I think it's okay. I mean, what I'm going to look at now is I'm going to see if there's any sort of like movement in his feet. As he descends, watch the weight on his feet. Where does the weight go? So as he starts to squat, seems pretty flat, 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 flat. And then when he gets to about his bottom, you'll see him kind of shift back into his heels right about there. You guys see that daylight under his shoes there? Okay. I want to clarify something. We've been teaching this at the level 1 seminar forever. That we emphasize weight in the heels for posterior chain engagement. Yes, we want that. And the reason why we cue that is people tend to be all on their toes. But it's important to understand that that's an overcue. We don't want you all heels. That's not ideal either. It's a good, better, best situation, right? Having your heels down as opposed to just having air under your heels is good. Is it the best cue? No. We don't want your toes floating off the floor. We use it as a temporary fix to say, hey, you feel your heels touching the ground? Cool. We want that. But there's a huge misunderstanding about tension when it comes to the hinge in the squat, in the deadlift. People think that, oh, I need to be all my weight in my heels. And I think if you go to a class that you're teaching and look and see what's going on with people's feet, it's going to be very, very prevalent, very, very common that people are going to do this thing where they start on their toes, they rock back into their heels and the outside edge of their foot. Watch for it. Very, very common. And then when you see a lot of that gross horizontal movement back and forth, what you're going to end up getting is that, like in a snatch or clean, people tend to jump forward. So if you're watching this video right now, if you know someone who jumps forward in their snatch or clean, the first thing I would look at is what are their feet doing? If you watch an elite weightlifter, like Olympic level weightlifting, you see that the feet stay flat. They stay glued to the ground, full platform. Coach B says big toe, little toe, heel. You want the full foot pressing through the ground. And if you see any deviation of that, like shifting in the feet, you can tell that there's probably a displacement of tension. The deadlift, the squat, those are going to be primarily stabilized by the glutes and hamstrings. As soon as you see an athlete start to roll onto the outside of their foot, you know they're not in the hamstrings anymore. They're loading the outer quad.
And he said to me this morning, yeah, I'm trying to get in the outside. He mentions like I'm trying to get in the outside of my foot and I'm trying to keep my knees out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I totally hear you on that heels down cue, because for years, Ray, I would say to people like, okay, get down in the bottom of your squat. Okay, now pick up your toe, tap your toes, like really getting them so far in their heel that there could have been no tension and no posterior chain. And just like you stress with us in the Stronghold mentoring group, that whole drive your knee out and how it just elicits this teeny tiny, like what, glute med.
Glute med.
And so I was talking to him also about that this morning. Like, well, honey, So what I want you to do, I already gave him like the primer on. I want you to create some tension. I want you to pull yourself down like something's coming at you, to try to give him some of those handy dandy tips. Because yeah, he is rolling to the outside. And I don't know if you can see that in the hokas. And I don't
Oh,
know
I
how.
can see it for sure. Yeah, he's rolling out, and he's like everything's going back and out.
Yeah.
So what that's telling me is that he's putting. I mean, you can see it right here. I was talking to Joey about that on the call yesterday. Is that the natural tendency is for people to put a lot of tension on the outer quad up here, on the glute med.
I can't see your screen.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Um, Commonly what you'll see in CrossFitters is their huge outside quad,
Okay.
pissed off TFL. People are always foam rolling their TFL, and their glute med is mad. They're using this part of their body to squat. And also, if you watch his low back when he comes up, I don't know if you can see it from this angle.
He was so sleepy.
Right?
Yeah.
There, you see, watch the crinkle in his shirt here. See, this is flat back. Watch as he comes up, how he arches the back. So he goes straight to erectors to stand.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's like no real contribution of the glutes, the hamstrings, or the VMO in this movement here. That knees out cue, so the spread the floor cue, this is my understanding of it. We got this cue from Westside Barbell, right? From Louis Simmons. And how do those people squat? They squat wide, which makes sense. You're going to spread the floor that way. But most CrossFitters, most Olympic weightlifters, they're going to squat well below parallel. And where in life do you ever actually create power below parallel? Never. It's only in CrossFit and weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, that you're expected to create power from below parallel. If you were to pick up a heavy rock off the ground, would you actually go below parallel, or would you have your butt in the sky?
Well, I don't know because my legs are so much thicker than
Okay.
my little back.
Most people, and if you look at say like Maddie Rogers, for example, if you look at like an elite weightlifter like Maddie, you're gonna see something happen when they come out of the hole, when they're coming out of like a heavy clean or something. So here you go. Let me show you this. Okay, here. So when she comes out of the bottom of the clean, boom. Okay, very upright, but where do the hips go on the way up?
Back.
So bounce, hips
Yeah.
go back. That's okay, as long as you bring it back forward. So that loading of the hips that way is a hinge pattern. The only time you actually have a real squat pattern in the squat is on that last quarter up there.
Okay.
That's when the glute medius and the outside quads want to fire.
Let me get this right, Ray.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how self-conscious I feel in these shorts on a recorded line, but that's okay. Okay, so what you're talking about is if I'm deep in my squat and my chest is upright, I'm not driving up this way, knees pressing out. I'm actually driving back and up.
For a moment, yes. For a moment, you're going to shift back a little bit.
Or
and
just
then you're
that
gonna
like
shift
10%
back.
out of the hole.
Yeah, well, maybe just till about parallel, and then you switch. You see, watch any Olympic weightlifter; they'll shoot back for a tiny bit, unless it's super light. Then you
You're
go
right. No, like if I'm on a tire, I do get really low.
Mhm.
And then the first thing I do on that tire is here
Mhm.
and then there.
Because it's a hinge. You're hinging. You need. So basically, the anatomy of that is that you need to be loading the hamstrings and the glutes to stabilize your legs, and then you're gonna press and lift up. So that's the same thing in a heavy clean.
Thank you.
There's a slight hinge back, and then you come back to the squat shape, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, it does.
basically, and what's funny, I mean, I'm gonna preface this right now. Like a lot of my practice has been kind of looking at the strong fit principles. And before anyone gets all poo-pooey about it, like strong fit's not a methodology; it's a set of principles. You can apply it to anything, to golf, to CrossFit, to weightlifting, to everything. So I'm stealing some of their stuff right now. A couple of things that I started talking to Julian after Coach B took his seminar, and Coach B wakes me up like 6 in the morning. He sends me a message at 6 a.m. You need to talk to this guy, this French dude. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So I talked to him, and we got in this conversation about the glutes, right? And how if you only spread the floor the entire time you squat, you're gonna F up your hips. And I'm like, nah, you're full of it. That's stupid. No, you won't. It's fine. Like, because you can create a great shape. In fact, if you look at some of my old Instagram videos on Stronghold Mentoring, I teach to spread the floor on the way down, to pull the hips apart as you squat. And it is an okay Q. It makes a shape that we want to. It creates a safe place for the knees. But that teeny tiny glute med, I'm gonna steal this photo from them. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
If I show this to people all the time, I ask them, "Hey, which muscles do you tend to foam roll the most, the reds or the yellows?" And they'll say, almost unanimously, I think 1 out of 80 people I've done an assessment with will say the reds, always the reds, right here, back here, up here, side of here, this stuff here. This is your glute med, this teeny tiny muscle right here. This teeny tiny guy is the one that people are warming up when they put the squat bands on. They walk sideways, they do the things. It's like,
Right.
so you're telling me that you want to use this teeny tiny muscle to support your hip as you squat heavy load, and you're not gonna. And so when Julian, I didn't explain it to me in these terms, but he basically said, if you do it without glute med, you're gonna f up your hip real bad. And I go, you're full of it. No, you're wrong. I mean, I'm an Olympic weightlifter. I've been doing this forever. No, won't mess up your hip. But you know what's really sad is literally last month I remembered there was one summer in 2016 when I literally had to take some voodoo floss and tape my hip together every time I squatted. I was squatting twice a week, and you know why? Because my groin was screaming bloody murder at me. And I think of it too. I was very, very big on that spread the floor cue on everything. I was doing lots of squat volume, and sure shit, as you say all the time, is that my hip fell apart. And here's the reason. If you take a look, just sheer mathematics, okay? How much bigger is this glute hamstring than this teeny tiny? I mean, hello, right? So
some of us are more endowed than others.
yes, and so here's the thing. Most CrossFitters, most people operate only in the red muscles. And when you need to foam roll, and I hate this. My biggest pet peeve is when I see people walk into the gym and they grab a foam roller and start foam rolling. Because it's like, cool. Basically, when you need to foam roll, you've got an imbalanced red to yellow. Right? And so people will foam roll, and then suddenly they're done foam rolling, they feel better. Okay? If people are predominantly overactive on the red muscles, that means, let's pretend, like a graphical explanation. Red muscles here, yellow muscles here. When you foam roll, effectively what you're doing with SMRs, you're shutting down the reds, so now they match the yellows, and that's why you feel better. Doesn't it make...
Everything is shut down.
Yeah,
How can you expect that to work?
but doesn't it make... So that being said, doesn't it make sense instead to turn the yellows on? And what's funny is that with most people... it's funny and it's very eye-opening. A lot of people that I work with have real no concept of how to use this. I mean, see this yellow part here on the forearm? This is why you can't false grip people, because you don't have this muscle. This is why you're always tearing your hands on the pull-up bar, because you're like this and you're grinding your hands apart. You know, if you look at the gymnastics course, how they tell you to hold the bar? Like this. When you false grip, you hold it like this. When you do your snatch and clean, you have your hand like this. Like, the yellow muscles, guys, the purpose of the yellow muscles is to create stabilization. These are your stabilizer muscles. They're meant for a long time under tension. The red muscles are your explosive muscles, the ones that make big things go boom. You go fast and stuff like that. If you're asking this teeny tiny red muscle to stabilize your heavy squat, rep after rep after rep, by the time it gets to the part of the squat where its job is to pitch in and be explosive, it's got nothing left anymore. So simple mathematics, doesn't it make sense? And this is the way we teach it, you know, in StrongFit, is we use the yellows for 75% of the lift and then switch to reds in the last part. Now, going back to like West Side Barbell type squatting, they're mostly in red the entire time. And it's because the dynamics of the stance width is different. And also competitively, a lot of times people will lift in gear, which does the work of the yellow muscles.
Yeah, right.
Interestingly enough, right? So I found a lot of success in helping people discover their yellow muscles and bring balance to the force, or complete the arch, as the StrongFit guys say. We want to balance the arch. Whereas most people tend to only be operating on one side of their body, which is crap. You know, if I can get this pec to fire and this teres major to fire, I'm gonna see a lot less shruggy in the overhead position.
Yeah.
Which we see in Justin.
He's less shruggy, man.
And, you know, I make that joke, right? You know, your traps are like your crazy ex.
I use it all the time.
Don't text your ex, man. That's a bad idea. So, that, by the way, in case anyone's wondering where I got that cue, it's from my friend Roz. She used to do small group training with me and Cody Bergner at Invictus, and she walks in one day with a shirt that says, "Don't text your ex." And so, anyway, Justin's not shrugging too hard here. He's a little passive. But you see, there's not a whole lot of active shoulder here.
No.
Okay? So what I would have him do here in this instance is try to rip the crap out of that paint stick. So that's how we create that tension. Um, you can create external rotation in the position by just turning your hand there. But there's one thing that I've been focusing a lot on in teaching is that position does not imply tension, but tension guarantees position, right? I can create this position all day long and I'm externally rotated, but if I do this and I flex the bicep, you see how it creates the external rotation. And now that's
Yeah.
where you see like the Chinese lifters, they're in that, people think it's internal rotation, but no, it's external rotation with internal torque. So you can have position um, independent of tension. Here's an example, okay? Here's a little pec stick deal, right? This
Yeah.
thing is going to turn on my pecs and my teres and my short head of the bicep, that same muscle here. And if you look at the graphic, they are friends. We don't think of these
Yellow, aren't
muscles. Yeah, they're the yellows here. So here, here, here. We don't think of these muscles as individual muscles really per se anymore. We think of them as chains. If you turn one on, you're gonna get the others connected to it. Maybe to some degree, more or less. I mean, sometimes people can't find the pec very well, but it is kind of sort of firing if you are firing these other two because they come together. So if you're not feeling as much pec, then it just means you have more opportunity to develop the pec. And how do you develop the pec? By working them all together. But see, the point of this thing is to fire up the yellows here. I can do this in external rotation, right? I'm in external rotation. I can also do it in internal rotation. Same musculature, same torque chain, but different rotation. So that's a big one that Richard taught us.
Yeah, that's a little mind-boggling.
Yeah, you can create internal rotation or external rotation with the same torque. Anyway,
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So usually when I teach like an overhead in my class, I've started teaching it like this. Put your hands on your face,
okay.
put your hands up,
Uh-huh.
take one arm and feel your underarm basically.
Okay.
Now turn the light bulb. And when they turn that light bulb, typically they can find that firing.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can't because you can turn the light bulb and not do it. But if I really, okay, now screw that, take your thumb and turn it back. Typically they can find what that muscle is where it is and what that muscle is supposed to be doing.
Yes.
So
Typical.
am I good on that? Or I'll say, put your hands on your face, send your hands up. Now pull your shoulders to your hips. I think Sarah gave us that one.
Yeah.
Pull your, shoulder to hip. Sometimes they're a little confused, like that. What are you talking about? But every
Well,
once in a while, it's a solid cue for me.
what I like to do too is to give people different options on ways to find that same muscle. Like if you put your hand on your armpit, squeeze your hand underneath your armpit. Do you feel teres and pec turn on? Can you do the same thing here? Like just do that same idea where you're using this to load the arm instead of shrugging and being in this position, right? So it's the same idea. If I want them to just feel it, like, okay, that's what the teres feels like, cool. Now put your hand over your head and do whatever you need to do, explore. However you need to create that same tension. I like the flex the bicep one because as soon as, off, on, off, on, off, on. And when it's on, you feel that turn on. And the same idea is, yeah, you can see it. Yeah, you can see it turn on.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it there.
Well, I know I can see yours, Ray, but I'm excited about mine.
Yeah.
Mine are older and weaker than yours.
So,
I also like the trucker arm. Everybody knows how to like.
oh, the trucker arm, yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty good one too because people, the fact of the matter is that when the muscle is shorter, it's easier to find. So it's easier to find here than it is here.
Okay.
Like the reason for that is that if a muscle is weak, it's going to be short. Man, we can go down a million rabbit holes right now, but I got to go in 5 minutes. So let me give you something actionable for Justin, okay?
Thank you.
And then we'll call it a day. But as you can see, people, I could talk about the overhead squat, the squat for like hours on end.
It's so interesting, and there's so many nuances and so many things to look at. You got knees and hips and feet and weight shifts and
Yes.
dynamic movement and setup.
That being said, I get this a lot when I teach level 2 seminars. We'll give people 7 minutes to teach a squat and 2 minutes later they're done. And I'm like, what? Did you not see the feet? He's rolling into his toes. He's not getting below parallel. His back is doing some weird archy stuff. You're not done. Fix him.
Yeah.
Right?
That's why I like the video analysis. It's easier on the video, and then I can train my eye real time
Yeah.
without
So
training my eyes slow.
so I'm just gonna spitball a bunch of things that I see here, and then I'm
Okay, good.
gonna
It's
encourage
recorded.
you to
No,
go. What's that?
I said good. It's
It's
recorded, so I can
recorded.
go back and look. I don't
Yeah,
have to
and then you can,
comprehend right now.
and then how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So I'm
Yeah.
gonna just in 2 minutes I'm going to look at all the things and kind of walk you through what I'm looking at, and
Okay.
then come up with a triage plan on where I'm gonna start on how to help him, and then you can go home and one by one whittle away at this. Okay? So
Okay. Great.
as a coach, the first time I'm looking at this person, I'm gonna look at their feet. What are they doing? What's the feet doing? Okay, I see that he's bobbling his feet. He's shifting his weight in his toes back into his heels. There's a lot of disconnect there. When you see the feet moving back and forth like that, it's kind of it's a good indicator that there is a displacement of tension somewhere. Go, I mean, watch Lydia Valentine, watch Maddie Rogers, watch these elite weightlifters, and just focus on their feet and see how just rock solid they are. And then watch your people in the gym, and you'll see that this is a very common thing. The feet are doing all kinds of funky stuff. And just from my experience watching people move, if they go to the outside edge of their foot, like there, that's very clear that he did that. You see how the crinkle right here? Watch the crinkle in the shoe. See as he goes down, you see how he starts shifting onto the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for
Yeah.
me, I know that he's loading his outside quad, and probably that the TFL and the glute med there. Now I don't like to tell people, and I made this mistake myself. I'm like, hey, push your big toe down, push your big toe down. Well, there's your position over tension again. Like, okay, I can put my big toe on the ground, but it doesn't mean I'm on tension. However, if you load this inside head of the hamstring, the foot will stay flat. And how do you? So here's where people they get like all like you either get offended or you're like whoa, right? That's kind of what happens when I teach it this way. I used to teach spread the floor all the time, so this is where I'm just gonna have you finish with this bit. Okay, when I teach the overhead squat or the squat in general, what I tell people is, hey, pretend like you're hanging from a pull-up bar. Okay, lift your knee to your just you like my Walmart pants? They're like eagles. They're screaming eagles. Anyways, I'm in my pajamas. You're welcome. So the knees, lift your knee up and just slightly out. Okay, do you feel your hip flexor turn on? I can't hear you because your microphone's muted.
Yes.
But you feel your hip flexor turn on right here, right?
Yeah.
Now grab your hamstring. Feel your hamstring.
Okay.
Is it on?
No.
Now pull your heel to your butt. Is it on now?
Yes.
Weird, right? Okay, so let's talk about this. The squat. When you go down into the squat, and this is the actionable thing I'll give you to work on. So we'll just start with this, and that's it. All right. It's really hard to keep this under 30 minutes because I just talk too much. Okay. So what we've seen is that we've created active hip flexion with a hip flexor. Yes. So I'm flexing my hip with my hip flexor. Mind blown yet? Weird, right? We use the hip flexor to flex the dang hip. That's what it's for. Okay, so we use the hip flexor to flex the hip to create hip flexion, and we use the hamstring to create knee flexion. Mind blown, yes? Now, if you do that, look at your knee and your toe. Do they point the same direction?
Yes.
Yes. Did I have to tell you knees out?
No.
No. If I tell you knees out, it's because something fell apart already. Knees out's a band-aid. It doesn't solve the problem. It's just a band-aid. So I create the correct position by creating the correct tension. So you could practice this by hanging off a pull-up bar. Bring your knee to your chest, bring your heel to your butt. Now you're in a perfect overhead squat. You're welcome. Right? So if you think of the squat this way, when you go down into the squat, instead of just falling to the bottom like everyone wants to do, actively pull the floor to you. Pull with your hip flexors. I mean, God. You know, the level 1 training guide on page 105, number 15, it says, do not just fall into the squat. Use your hip flexors to pull yourself down into the squat. How many level 1 trainers, level 2 trainers, level 3 trainers for that matter know, oh, that's what that means. Oh, wow, it's been in there forever.
Yeah.
Wow, you mean I'm not supposed to just fall into the bottom with no tension? You know, in the level 1 seminar, we talk about how the line of action of a squat is hips down and back. We see oftentimes there's 2 ways that people do this incorrectly. Number 1, they do this Beyonce squat where they unlock their hips and they go like that. And then,
See that constantly.
Constantly.
I see it constantly.
and Justin does it too. Or you see this big exaggerated hips back. Woo! Okay, here's the thing, guys. If you actually use the hip flexor, and remember, CrossFit's core to extremity movement, right? If you use your hip flexor, which from the GHD lecture, you remember the psoas is one of your hip flexors. It's part of your core. So core to extremity, the core happens by flexing the hip with hip flexor. If you flex the hip with your hip flexor, your hips are gonna go down and back. You're not gonna do the elevator thing where you go straight down. You're like, people do the elevator thing. It's like a muted hip where the hip never closes. So if you actually use the psoas, your hip
They're
flexor.
like, I've got knee pain.
Well,
I'm like,
yeah,
yes.
because you're loading your dang quads for everything. So
Well, yes, you do.
it just blows my mind. Okay, so yeah, your hips will go down and back. It won't be super exaggerated, but they will go down and back. Go draw a line. I have someone stand by the wall and draw a line where their butt was. Okay, and then have them do that thing, pull down with the hip flexor. Their butt will go down and back. It's not going to be super exaggerated, but it will go down and back. I don't want to poo-poo. I don't want to poo-poo like the cues that we use in level 1 because they're useful, right? We teach them because we want to give you the very basics, right? We don't want to inundate the level 1 participants with all the nuance and all the details, like, because it's too much. But here's where my beef, all right? Where you get people who go to their level 1, they think, okay, I know everything. Like, no, you don't. Not even close. I'm gonna say this too. If you're coaching regularly and you have your level 1, and you've been doing it for more than 6 months, go do your level 2. Don't wait 5 years.
Can we say that in unison?
Yeah.
Get your level 2.
Don't wait 5 years to be told you're terrible at coaching.
No.
Don't do that.
It's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. Like, so we teach the simple cues: knees out, hips back, heels down. We teach that on level 1 because we're getting you started. Okay, they're not bad cues. They do a good job of correcting, especially for people who don't care how the sausage is made and they just want to get sweaty. Okay, perfect for them. All right, they don't need to know all the details and the nuance. However, you don't want to be the coach that's a one-trick pony and you don't know what to do. Case in point, and we'll end with this piece. Okay, I failed my very.
Tell me, what is it I need to cue him on? I need to cue him on pull yourself down in your squat.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I would start there.
Okay.
Just start there.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, and if you need some variants on things you can do, I like, this is a weird cue that works a lot and it seems so counterintuitive, is have him stand in a squat stance, like shoulder width apart, whatever it is. Okay, now think about, you can try this with one leg at a time. Okay, have him go into a split squat and then pretend like, he's got to make extra money on the weekend. So he's stripping, right? Some really creepy chick is way over there, and he needs to get that $100 bill that she put on the stage, but he doesn't want to get too close. So he's gonna put his big toe out and pull it to him, and you'll feel that hamstring turn on.
Okay.
Now make that feeling as you're squatting with both legs. And so what that's gonna do is it's gonna create that active knee flexion using the hamstring, the inside head of the hamstring, semimembranosus if you want to get really nerdy. Okay, you're gonna pull yourself down. When you use the hamstring to flex the knee and the toe will track together.
Okay.
Unless you're doing something stupid and off. Like, another way to teach that is I'll say, pretend like you've got a med ball between your knees. Squeeze the med ball, but don't let your knees come in. So that you create that externally rotated position, but then you create that internal torque.
Okay, I'm trying that. Okay, now you can close. I'm sorry.
So set your knees.
Yeah, that's much different.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
See, it looks like that.
And then one more. Let's just make it more messy, okay? I would recommend. Oh, look, see how your knees and toes track the same?
Yeah, that's why I did that. And I've got a fairly close stance up here. Usually I squat wider. It's just more comfy.
And so, if you address those two things, I'm pretty confident his knees won't be so pissed off anymore.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Ray.
So yeah, we went a little over time. It's really hard for me to keep it under 30.
Wrap up with something, and I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna wrap up with, kind of going that thread, right? We teach this the basics at the level 1, okay? I don't want people to just hang their hat on that. You can get really good at teaching beginners, but as soon as you have someone who moves good and you don't know what to do, then you've reached the we call it the when we're operating at the gosh, I'm screwing this up. This is why I don't have this lecture yet at the level 1 yet. We're operating at the fringes of your experience right? If you're only working with terrible movers, then you kind of get complacent with them being okay. You're not going to be a good coach. So case in point, when my very first time as a redshirt intern, first level 1 seminar staff, I failed miserably. you're supposed to teach the squat breakout for an entire hour, and I did it for 21 minutes because I was like, they look good to me. Cool. Got anything to add, Todd Widman? And Todd's like, what? Jumps in. He goes, okay, you. We're gonna do this. And I'm just like, face is melting off. I'm like, dude, I didn't know what I didn't know. So
No.
all that.
That's how I felt with my level two. I took my first level two in 2015. I'd been a trainer, since 2009, so 6 years. And I mean, I'm pretty good. I mean, I can teach pretty well, and it was awesome because I got two things. I got one, there's always something to correct. Like, I'm a pretty good mover. I'm very, very body aware. I don't have any flexibility issues. I really don't have any old injuries, nothing big. But I got like ripped up. My movement patterns got ripped up. And then I really understood, like, wow, there's a lot more than, your knees need to go out and your butt needs to go back.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing I got. And then the second thing I got was a level of commitment that every athlete, every day, moves better leaving the gym than they did walking in.
Yes.
And I did not get that in my level one.
Yeah.
So those two things in my level two, and then re-upping my second level two was just so much fun. But those were the two sort of mind-boggling things that I got out of my first level two.
Yeah. I mean, I teach the level twos, and I still learn something when I teach a level two. So that being said, if you feel like you arrived, you're wrong. If you think you know all the things, you're wrong, and you need a little bit of humble pie. Like, I mean, just yesterday,
Level two will hand it to you.
level two will hand it to you on a golden platter. And,
Yeah.
and even yesterday, like, I was like, we have, like I said, we have 5 coaches calls a week. Yesterday's call, someone was asking me, didn't you used to say this? And I was like, yeah, I was wrong. I- It's, and that's just the nature of coaching. Like, you're gonna learn, and then you're gonna learn more, and you're like, oh. But we'll end on this thought here. The biggest thing that I will tell you as a coach is that, and it's funny because I saw someone else post this yesterday, but I've been saying it forever, so I'm gonna just say that right now, and you've heard me say it too. Is it depends. If you're looking for a hard and fast rule that'll fit everybody, you're not gonna find it, because everybody is different. Everybody is different, and so you need to not just memorize heels down, knees out, hips back, chest up. If you're just a robot repeating cues and don't know why, you're not going to be a good coach. You need to actually understand. If you want to be good, you need to understand the nuances of why. How does the knee go out? How do you make the knee go out? How do you make the chest? How do you make the external rotation? How do you get the bar in the right place? How do you position him correctly? We use positional cues at the level 1 because they're easy and they're great for beginners to get started to coach. Because 9 times out of 10, if you say knees out, you're going to keep that knee safer than it would be when it's caved in. But is the knee out cue the end all? Hell no. It's the beginning. So now the real question is, well, why the knee cave in the first place? The knee caved in because there was no tension. And when the body looks for tension, it's going to shorten the muscles until it finds something, and that's why the knee dives in. That's why the knee dives in, guys, because there's no tension on the inside of the leg. It needs to be there. If it doesn't find it, it's going to find it somehow, and sometimes it'll go way beyond where you're supposed to go. If you load the hamstring like I was talking about there's going to be tension on the inside of the leg, and the knee will not come in. I've seen people who have squatted so terribly, just rolling into their ankles all day long, and I would say, knees out, knees out, knees out, knees out, and nothing would change. And then one day, I remember this lady at CrossFit Del Mar in San Diego, I was teaching her. She was always cave into her ankles, always. And I learned this cue from Richard, and I was like, hey, can we try something real quick? And she's like, okay. I'm like, all right, we're going to squat. I want you to pretend there's a med ball between your knees. Don't let your knees come in, but crush the med ball. But just don't let the knees dive in, but pretend like it's there and crush it. And I'm like, think about pulling the mats together. And she's like, that's weird. I'm like, yeah, I know. Try it. So she's doing it. She's squatting. She gets down. And I go, look at your knees. And she's like, oh, how does that feel? She's like, strong. I'm like, cool, you're welcome. Then I walked away. It's like I never had to tell her knees out again. Ever. Because I fixed the root of the problem, not band-aid the issue.
Right.
Like, but that being said, when you're a new coach and you don't have the equipment to like really fix the solution, the knee out cue is great. It's
It's
good.
safe.
It's good, better, best, right?
Yeah.
Good, better, best. And you're gonna get people in the gym who don't care how the sausage is made. They just want to come and sweat. And so knee out, perfectly good cue for them. I will say that to them.
I will say though, as an owner, if you don't address tension, you will have churn.
Oh, for
Because
sure.
you will have
You'll hurt
injury
people.
over time.
People will get
Over
broken.
time.
Yeah. But I would say 9 times out of 10, the person who doesn't care how the sausage is made, they're not going to push themselves that hard anyway.
Okay, I'll give you that. Yeah,
Right?
I agree.
They
No,
won't
I
push
totally agree.
themselves.
They do. They just want to come in, get a little sweaty. They're
Yeah.
not like gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And philosophically, what I would say is, hey, it's more important to have right relationships and be right. You know, 2015 Ray would have been on that person's case, like, you need to like create external rotation with knee flexion and this and squeeze your mitochondria and all that crap, and like, and then they quit 2 weeks later because they don't want to work with me anymore.
Right.
Versus now, if I see, oh, they don't care. All right, hey, knees out. Okay, good, that looks great. And then I wait 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Hey, how do I squat more? Well, let's try this. And they're like, and then they're bought in.
Yeah.
Because I took care of them.
Yeah.
You don't want to frustrate someone to the point where they quit and then you lose your opportunity to help them, right?
Well, that's what we talk about all the time in the Stronghold group is that if you don't know why they're there, then you don't know how to coach them.
Exactly. And that's why I said it's important for you to know what they do for work and who they are as a person in general. You know, like I coached a couple gyms, and like, you know, one lady one time, she was totally blowing me off, and usually she's nice, but here's what I know about her. You know, like she just kind of seemed aloof, you know? And it's like what I know about her, she's a forensic scientist at the police department, or you know, like she sees some crazy shit.
Yes, she does.
And she's probably just had an off day. So I'm not. It would be wrong of me to take that as a personal thing. And so you know what I did that day is I just changed my tune. I was like, hey, you know what? Today I'm gonna make this person smile, and make them just kind of help them. You know, that 2015 Ray would be like, you don't want to listen to me? Well, you suck, and da 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 da. You need to do this. Like, no, no. Like, coaching is about seeing what they need for the given day, and giving that to them that day. You'll have 6 people in the class. One person, high anxiety, just needs to blow off some steam. Help them feel safe. Other person, not very confident in themselves. Help them feel accomplished. Other person just wants to hear you beat the crap out of them with cues. Give that to them. The other person thinks they know all the things. So you just kind of coddle their ego a little bit and then sprinkle a little bit of reality until they're like, oh, okay, I see it. But you see how every single person in the room got a different version of me? And they got the version that they needed for the day for that 1 hour they had with me.
Yeah.
All right, so we are well over 30 minutes. But
you know what? You can't get the two of us together and it be short.
that's true. So moving forward, guys, if you would like to be part of this Q&Ray, I'm accepting applications. Send me a DM on Instagram, Ray Regno. I'll put that on the bottom there. And then yeah, 30 minutes once a week. I'm gonna give it away. Come to me with questions on coaching, running your gym, things like that. Bring video for us to look at, and I will hopefully leave you better than you came. Thank you, Amy, for helping me with this, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.